Hi there. I wanted to welcome everybody to my weekly show. Thank you for tuning in. This week I want to talk about my book that I wrote. As those of you who have listened to me in the past know, my name is Doug Zanes. I am a personal injury attorney. I have offices in both Tucson and Phoenix, Arizona. In fact, we are one of the biggest personal injury law firms in Arizona altogether. And so we spend a lot of time representing injured victims and helping them kind of move forward with their lives after accidents. And so I have actually put together a book that's entitled Winning Your Personal Injury Case, The Ultimate 8-Step Guide to Protect Your Health, Family, and Finances. And this book can actually be found on Amazon.com. There's a Kindle version or a digital version that can be downloaded onto any e-reader or onto a Kindle. I think it's $2.99 for the book, and then it's also available as a paperback book through Amazon.com as well. And you can search it either by the title or by my name, Doug Zanes. And so, but I want to talk a little bit about most of the topics that the book covers, because really the purpose of the book, the reason I wrote the book, was to provide information to people who have been in accidents, so they kind of know what to expect. They know, they know what the kind of pitfalls can be if they handle the case on their own. They know what they need to watch out for. They've got some insight into how the insurance company works and how insurance coverages work and all of those things. And so the book is primarily designed to help people who want to handle their own personal injury case instead of hiring a lawyer. And so that's first and foremost. But I actually, to tell you the truth, once I actually got it written and out there, I think it's actually a very beneficial book to anybody who hasn't been in an accident, because really when you need this information, or it really is helpful if you know this information or have this information before you get into an accident. Once you've gotten into it, if you then have to go and find the book, there's still the potential to make some initial mistakes that can negatively impact any case that you have. And so, the idea is by putting this information out there for people to find, to read. It's very affordable. It's an easy read. It's only about 32 pages, so it's probably, you can read the whole book in less than an hour, I think, for most people. And so the idea would be you can read it and know what to expect and know how to prepare yourself and to make sure that you're protected. But the first question is, again, when it comes to reading the book or listening to my show, I mean, why should you listen to me, or why should you get this book and read it? And I can tell you, I mean, I guess I'd start that answer by saying, well, the reason I've done it is to simply help people and provide them information. I've been a practicing attorney in Arizona for over 17 years now. I've over the last 11 years, I've built one of the largest personal injury law firms in Arizona. We've represented thousands of people over that time frame. We've helped our clients obtain, at this point and counting, and really I think it's from about 2005 or so until now, over $70 million in settlement revenues on cases, or injury awards on cases up to this point. So we've represented lots and lots of clients on lots of different cases. We've pretty much seen everything that you can possibly see in these cases. So I've got a lot of insight from that perspective. A member of the Millionaire Advocates Forum, which is a group that's quite honestly limited to a very small percentage of attorneys in the U.S. And in order to become part of that group, you have to obtain awards in these cases that exceed $1 million, which quite honestly I don't think most attorneys out there have ever done. And so I just have a lot of insight, and and it's like anything else. I mean, I want to provide this information out there. Hopefully it's helpful and beneficial to most people. If it's not, that's okay. I mean, like I said, it's a relatively easy read, and my guess is there's something in here that you will find helpful and beneficial to you. One of the main things I initially like to talk to clients about, and I address it in my book, is what you need to do to protect yourself. In particular, to make sure that you're not victimized a second time. And the reason knowing that or having that information before an accident is hugely important is because once the accident happens, you can't go back and fix this. And it all deals with what type of insurance coverage you purchase, you have on your vehicle. I think people make the mistake of saying when they purchase insurance, they make the mistake of only buying liability insurance coverage because, again, insurance is cheap, right? And it's all relative. If you don't have a lot of extra money, it's easy to not buy uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. It's easy to not buy medical payments coverage. It's even easy to not buy collision coverage because you think, hey, look, I'm a good driver. I don't expect that, I will cause an accident. So that means the person who's at fault for the accident, who damages my car, who hurts me, they will be responsible for paying for these things, for fixing my car, for compensating me for my injuries. And that's true. All of that's 100% true. What gets missed is this, and that is lots of people are driving around out there with absolutely no auto insurance coverage at all. And I realize that's against the law. Every state that I know of has a law that says you must have auto insurance coverage. But that doesn't change the fact that there are plenty of people who ignore that law because, primarily I would guess because they just don't have the money for insurance coverage, and they don't get coverage. And if you get hit by one of those people and all you have is liability coverage, there will be absolutely no money to pay to fix your car. There will be absolutely no money to pay for your medical care, and there will be absolutely no money to compensate you for your pain, your suffering, your injuries, your lost time from work, or any of those things. That most people don't realize is a problem until after you've been in an accident, and then it's too late. You can't go and purchase those coverages after the fact. So you have to have them ahead of time. And so I would urge everybody who listens to this to go get a copy of your auto insurance policy and look at what's called the declarations page or the deck page and see what kind of coverages you have. And look at whether or not you have uninsured motorist coverage, underinsured motorist coverage. Look at whether or not you have medical payments coverage, and look at whether or not you have collision coverage in addition to your liability coverage. If you don't have these other coverages, you really need to consider getting them. And so I'm going to walk through each type of coverage briefly so you understand why it's important. Liability coverage is very important to protect you if you ever cause an accident and hurt somebody. In particular, if you have assets, it's very, very important. But even if you don't have assets, again, you can go, everybody can take a step back and say, well, why do I need it if other people don't have insurance? It's expensive, I can't afford it, so I'm just not going to get it. Well, one problem is that is against the law, so you could actually get a ticket. You're not going to go to jail for it, but you can get a ticket for it and have to pay a fine. And it's an expensive fine. Two, really, if you cause an accident, the peace of mind of knowing that you're going to be protected and covered by your insurance company if that other person decides to sue you, I think is huge. It really is. You don't want to have a judgment against you. You don't want to have to personally pay this person if they were to come after you personally if you didn't have insurance. And that's what liability coverage is for. So it's important to protect you if you're at fault for an accident and if you hurt somebody. The other type of insurance that's very important is collision coverage. And really, it's listed in policies, I think, in two ways. It's listed as both comprehensive and collision coverage, but there's a difference between the two. The comprehensive coverage covers your car if it's stolen. That's what gets you reimbursed by the insurance carrier or gets you a new car, is the comprehensive coverage. If your car were to catch on fire for some reason, that's what covers it. If you were to get stuck, let's say, in a big wash, let's say, here in Tucson and even in Phoenix, when you get big summer rains, if the inside of your car were to get flooded somehow, it's the comprehensive coverage that generally pays to fix it or buys you a new car. It's not the collision coverage because you haven't been involved in an accident. Collision coverage is just that. The collision coverage exists to both fix your vehicle, buy you a new vehicle if it's wrecked in an accident, and then also fix somebody else's vehicle if you're involved in an accident and you harm them. But that's actually part of your liability coverage. So the separate collision coverage really kicks in to cover your vehicle. And it's very important because we see client after client, or I've seen lots of clients over the years who didn't have collision coverage. Turns out when it's all said and done, the accident actually was my client's fault. And now they have no way to get their vehicle fixed. They have, and they're out of luck because they didn't have collision coverage. Or they've been hit by somebody who's uninsured, and my client didn't have collision coverage. And so they're still in a place where there's no quick way to get their vehicle fixed, to get a new vehicle. You can go sue the party who's at fault, who didn't have any insurance. But, again, what are you going to get out of somebody who doesn't have any money? And the answer typically is not a lot. And so collision coverage protects you under all of those circumstances. Medical payments coverage. That is basically no-fault coverage that's available in any no-fault state. Now, keep in mind, around the country, there are no-fault insurance states, and insurance functions a little bit differently in those states than it does in Arizona. But in medical payments coverage, certainly in the state of Arizona, exists to pay your medical bills. Even if you have health insurance that pays those bills, most of the time you can make a medical payments claim, and your medical payments policy will actually compensate you for the total of your medical bills. So you actually get compensated in addition to having your bills paid by health insurance. And so medical payments coverage is important. It's not as important, I think, as the other coverages, as collision coverage and underinsured motorist coverage. But in general, it's pretty inexpensive. When you buy an insurance policy, the most expensive parts of that policy are the liability coverage and the comprehensive collision coverage. So if you have a $600 bill for 6 months worth of insurance coverage, this is just a ballpark, but in most of the policies I see, the vast majority of it. So let's ballpark it at $500 of the $600. The vast majority of that $600 simply goes for that liability and collision coverage. So you've paid, just to have those coverages, you've paid most of what you're going to pay. If you add medical payments coverage, whether it's $5,000 worth of coverage or $10,000 or $25,000, it's relatively inexpensive in the grand scheme of things for the coverage that you get. And so it's certainly worth looking at, it's worth considering, and take it with this in mind. I hear lots of people tell me when they talk to an insurance agent, the agent says to them, oh, if you have health insurance, you don't need medical payments coverage. I don't think that's accurate. And I think insurance agents say that to people because overall, insurance companies don't make much money off of the premium you pay for medical payments coverage. And overall, they end up paying out a lot of money because of those claims. So they don't make a lot of money and they have to pay out a lot of money. So the insurance company line is, whenever they can get you to agree, is that you don't need it. And so keep in mind, if you have health insurance, even if you have health insurance, there are benefits to having medical payments coverage. So it's something worth considering depending on your situation. Now, two coverages that I think are hugely important, that I think everybody needs, are uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. And they're generally sold separately. Some insurance companies kind of sell them as a package together. But nowadays, most insurance companies sell them separately. Hugely important that you have both uninsured motorist coverage and underinsured motorist coverage. And if your insurance agent tells you you don't need them, I wouldn't buy it, because I think you do. If you simply say to your insurance agent or your insurance company, I want full coverage, you need to specifically ask and make sure that full coverage includes uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage, because sometimes they try to pass off liability and comprehensive collision coverage as full coverage. And so you want uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. The reason you want it is this. Like I said, there are lots of drivers out there who don't have insurance, even if it's the law. They don't have it. And if you get hit by one of those drivers, it's your uninsured motorist coverage that will compensate you for your medical bills, for your injuries, for your lost time from work. It basically steps in to the same place the at-fault person's liability coverage would be when they don't have it. And it's important because we see client after client after client who's in an accident, who's hurt badly, who deserves to be compensated, and it turns out they're hit by somebody who doesn't have insurance coverage, and our client doesn't have uninsured motorist coverage, and they're stuck. They're out of luck. And keep in mind, this is also very important. Your uninsured motorist coverage follows you. So if you're a pedestrian and you're walking across the street and you get hit by a car, even though you're not driving your car, your uninsured motorist coverage will actually apply to that accident. If you're riding a bike, if you're a bicyclist and you get hit by a car, your uninsured motorist coverage will apply to that accident. And so will your medical payments coverage for that matter. If you're a passenger in a friend's car or a relative's car and you get into an accident, even though you weren't in your car, your uninsured motorist coverage and your med pay will both apply to that accident. They're very good coverages to have. And I can tell you, I look at policy after policy, and a reasonably good uninsured motorist coverage portion of the policy generally costs something like $15 to $20 every 6 months. That's it. So it's worth adding to your regular coverages. Now keep in mind, most insurance companies won't sell you more uninsured motorist coverage or more underinsured motorist coverage, a bigger policy limit than you have for your liability coverage. Just keep that in mind. The more liability coverage you buy, the more uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage you can buy. But uninsured motorist coverage is very, very important because it does kick in a significant amount of time. And again, insurance agents don't like to sell it. Insurance companies don't like to sell it because they make very little money off of it in premiums, and they end up paying out on it over and over and over again. But it's very important. I think everybody's got to have uninsured motorist coverage. I think it's a must. And I think it's a must to have as much as you can possibly afford. Years ago, after starting my firm and handling car accident cases for a number of years, I went out and purchased the biggest liability insurance policy I could afford because I wanted to get as much uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage as I possibly could in order to protect me and my family. That is how strongly I believe in it. That is how important I think it is. Now, underinsured motorist coverage is really in that same vein, but where it applies is when you were in a car accident. The car accident wasn't your fault, and the person that hit you had insurance, but they just didn't have enough to fairly compensate you. So let's say you're in a car accident and you have a pretty significant injury. Let's say you break your leg and have to have surgery on your leg and have a case that may be worth $200,000-$300,000 or more. And the driver that hit you only has $25,000 worth of liability coverage. Well, if you don't have underinsured motorist coverage, all you're going to collect on is the $25,000. That's it. Even though your case is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Underinsured motorist coverage comes into play when the driver who hurt you, the person who hurt you, doesn't have enough insurance to fairly compensate you. So you would collect, under the example I gave you, the $25,000 policy from the at-fault driver. And then you would go make your underinsured motorist claim with your insurance policy, and they would pay you in addition to that $25,000. So if you then had $100,000 worth of underinsured motorist coverage and your case was worth a couple $100,000, you'd get the $25,000 from the at-fault party and the $100,000 from your underinsured motorist plan. Um, that's a big deal. That's you're still not being fully compensated. With 125,000, let's say, instead of 200, but that extra 100,000 is a big difference, and that's coming from you and the policy that you purchased, and that's why you purchased that policy. Some people, I have clients who really kind of get upset and they say, well, why should my insurance company pay out on this? The accident wasn't my fault. And the answer is, well, that's why you bought either uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And because you bought it, now it's time for them to pay out because it serves its purpose. And it's hugely, hugely important. Most people who I see, quite honestly, who are fully compensated for their injuries are fully compensated because they have a good either underinsured or uninsured motorist policy. I can tell you flat out in no uncertain terms, most people who I see who are clients of ours who get fully compensated only get fully compensated because they have the insurance. Even that, they're getting something from the at-fault party, but most people just don't carry the insurance coverages that they should. And if you're the one who's hurt, you're the one who gets the short end of the stick. So you need to put these coverages in place before an accident ever happens. It's very, very important. And so, that is something I think that's huge. That is something, insurance coverages is something I'm willing to discuss with anybody. So if anybody's listening to this and you've got questions, feel free to email me at dzanes, that's D-Z-A-N-E-S, at zaneslaw.com. And I'm happy to answer your questions and happy to help you out. That's how strongly I believe in this, because it's having the right insurance coverages for yourself personally. That's what's going to make sure you get fully compensated if you're hurt in an accident and the accident isn't your fault. Now, chapter 2 in my book really covers insurance coverages in pretty good detail. And so, again, we've covered it in a reasonably good way here in my show this week. But it is worth a read. It is worth having the information, and then it is worth doing more research on the different types of coverages on your own, because it's very, very important. So I appreciate you tuning in today and listening to my show. Again, this is Doug Zanes, and this is my personal injury legal tips show. I do it every week, and so I look forward to talking to you again next week. Thanks.